So today we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about your annotated bibliography that you have to do for your first assignment in this class. So first I want to explain a little bit. I kind of use the words bibliography and works cited interchangeably. I do want to explain there is a difference, but the difference isn't that important in relation to this assignment. So works cited is when you write an actual essay that you've quoted and summarized from, and then at the end you give a list of the sources that you used. A bibliography means you didn't necessarily cite any sources or use those sources. And so because you're not writing an essay along with this annotated bibliography, it's technically a bibliography, not a works cited. But for the purposes of this assignment, whether I say bibliography or works cited, don't get confused. If you do get confused, ask me or go back and look at that sample paper. But basically the idea behind this is you are going to show me what sources you used. So what is an annotated bibliography? Again, a bibliography is just a list of sources that you use to research a topic. Annotation is where you're summarizing or evaluating something. And so to put it all together, an annotated bibliography is just a list of sources that you use for researching a topic, followed by a summary and evaluation of each of the sources. So for this assignment, you've got to have 4 total sources. One of them must come from a library database. Why? Because I want you to show me that you know how to use the library databases. It's going to be important as you get into your higher level classes that you know how to do that, so you need to learn how to do it now. One must be a credible website. The reason for that is because lots of you use the internet all the time, but you don't use it very well necessarily. So you're going to websites looking up information that are not very credible. And so I want you to learn, how do you know when you find information on a website, how do you know whether you can trust that information or not? And so that's part of what this assignment is forcing you to do. For the other 2 sources, you can have 2 more library databases, you can have 2 more credible websites, you can do books, documentaries, journals, interviews, any combination of any of those things. So again, as long as you have 4 total sources, and as long as 1 is from a library database and 1 is from a credible website, the other 2 can be anything, any combination of anything else, but still needs to be credible. So make sure all 4 of your sources are credible. Okay, so you're going to pick your topic and you're going to search for articles on the web and in the databases. And I want to just caution you now, you cannot use Wikipedia. Do not turn in an annotated bibliography where Wikipedia is one of your sources. Now, I really like Wikipedia as a website. It's great for getting just a background idea about what things are. But it is considered to not be credible by academics. So that means probably no college professor that you ever have will allow you to use Wikipedia. It is considered not okay to use in a college essay. So I want to break you of the habit of it now. The reasoning for that is that people can edit things, and here's just an example of that. Obviously this actor is not a dinosaur, but it says right here he is a velociraptor. It'll probably take the editors of Wikipedia, I don't know, it could take as little as 5 minutes, it could take as much as, days or weeks for them to find that. People can edit it, and even though the editors on Wikipedia are pretty good about catching things like this, they do miss things sometimes, and you don't want to be citing this kind of information when you're not sure who put this on there or how accurate it is. What you can use Wikipedia for is its references. So I'm going to show you really quickly. The sample article we're going to look at today is about texting and driving. So if we go to texting and driving on here, and and look at the resources down here, these references, you can use these in your as one of your articles. So if you go down here and click on one of these and you find that it's a good article and you like it and you want to use it, you can absolutely use that. There's some good articles cited here. Here's one from the New York Times. Here's one from Journal of Safety Research. So you can, if you can get to these, if you can just click on these and open up the articles, you can use these if you decide you like them and if you think they're credible. Please don't copy the way they have them cited here. This is not correct MLA format. Do not copy and paste this into your works cited because these are not correct. Okay, so going back to what I do want you to do. So you're going to start with your works cited / bibliographic entry, and it should look like this. Now, I want to use today an article from a database just to refresh your memory on how to do it. So the first thing you want to do to get to the library databases is go to the library webpage. You can do this just by Googling USC Upstate Library, or go to the Home Upstate page and click on Library. Right here, this little box says Database and E-Resources Index. So this is how you find the databases. Now, you can just browse them, but I think it's a lot easier to go in with an idea of what database you want to look at. So, there are two that are my favorite, which are Opposing Viewpoints and Points of View Reference Center. So those are my favorites. I think those are really good ones. Two other good ones are Academic Search Premier and JSTOR, which is spelled J-S-T-O-R, all capital letters. So those are 4 options. You can also just go in and click on them, and like if you click on a letter, it'll go down, it'll take you to that list right there, and you can just look and see, do any of these sound like something that I want? But again, I think Opposing Viewpoints is a really good one, so that's what I've used for our example here. I've already got it up over here, the article that I want to use. And so I went to Opposing Viewpoints and I typed in texting while driving in the little search bar, and it gave me a list of different articles, and I just kind of browsed the articles and I found this one that I liked. Now, right now we're talking about the works cited entry or the bibliographic entry. What's great about these databases is that almost all of them at the bottom give you your works cited entry that you need. What's not so great about it is when you copy and paste it and put it into your paper, it's not perfect. So just to show you, I copied and pasted this one into here, and here's what it does. See, it's got the wrong font up here, it's got the wrong size, so I definitely have to go in and change that. So I just want to highlight it and go in and do Times New Roman 12-point font, because that's what all of your papers have to be in. I also want to go to paragraph here and make sure that I double space it, and also make sure that I click this little box here that says don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. So now this looks better. It's still not perfect because I have to tab over this second line. So the first line stays exactly where it is, which is flush with the margin. The second line has to get tabbed over. Now here's what you might run into. You hit tab and oops, that's what happens. It happens. It's an easy fix. Just click this little undo back button. That will undo what you just did. Go to this second line and click enter a couple of times until it actually goes down. Then you can hit backspace to bring it back up to where it was, and then you can hit tab again, and voila, it's perfect now. So make sure that you go in and do those little things. Don't just copy and paste it and slap it in your paper. If you do that but you haven't changed the font and you haven't done the tab, I'm going to take off points. Alright, so that we're going to cover more in depth how to make a works cited if you're using a website, if you're using something where you don't have it, where you can copy and paste it into your paper, we'll do that later. For right now, I'm focusing on databases. So, so again, you can copy and paste that and fix it, and that's the very first thing that you want to put when you're making your bibliographic entry, is that works cited part. Then what you want to do is have a summary. So summaries, let's talk about those. You've done this before. Summaries are where you explain the main idea of something in your own words. You summarize all the time. When someone says to you, "How was your day?" Well, you're not going to go through a play-by-play of every single detail of what you did that day. That would be boring. You're just going to give them the main points of what you did in your day. Same thing if someone says, "Hey, what was that movie about?" or "What was that book about?" You can't give them every single detail. So your brain is going to have to sort through the information and go, "Oh, here are the most important things that happened in this book or movie that I'm trying to summarize." It's the same thing when you summarize in your annotated bibliography. Now here's what you're going to be tempted to do and what I don't want you to do. You're going to be tempted to go into your article and copy and paste sentences. That is called plagiarism. That is going to get you an F on your paper, I promise you. Why? We're going to use safe assign in here. It's going to catch that. Don't do it. Now, the reason I'm being so strict about this is, number one, that plagiarism is bad. It's the worst thing you can do in an English class. Number two is that I'm going to teach you the right way to summarize. Here's what you should do when you summarize. So you've got your article. You want to read your article from beginning to end, and then you want to take a little bit of time away from it. Go text your friend, go get a snack, go take a walk, do something, and then come back. I would say certainly give it at least 5 minutes before you come back and try to summarize, because what's going to happen is that information that you read is going to integrate itself into your brain, and you're going to be able to write your summary without plagiarizing, because it's already in your brain. Now you have to spit it back out in your own words, and so you've had time to absorb it and to think about it. Now you're going to be tempted when you start to do this to go back and look at the article. Don't do that yet, because again, once you do that, once you open it up, you're going to have that temptation to copy and paste. So don't do it. Just go back, open up your document underneath your works cited and start typing. And so you want to type a couple of sentences. Your summary needs to be about 4 to 5 sentences. Just type a couple of sentences that are the main idea of that article that you just read. Then you can go back to the article and look at it and make sure that you got your facts correct. But using this method, so this is the same method that you use when you answer an essay question on a test. So if you've ever had a history test where they've said something like, explain what events led up to World War I, or something like that, or they've said, or like maybe you had a biology class where it said, explain the process of osmosis. Well, you don't have your book there, you don't have an article there. You have to use what you learned from reading your books and listening to lectures. You've got to take that, find where it is in your brain, and then summarize that information on the page. This is the best way to summarize. This is exactly what you want to do when you're doing your summaries for this assignment. So we're actually going to go over a very short article and summarize it. I'm going to read it quickly, and then I'm going to show you how I summarized it using this method. And just to show you how to find information on the databases, this is the title of the article right here at the very top. Distracted driving hits home hard. Publication. When we say publication, we mean newspaper, journal, magazine. This right here, USA Today, that is the name of the publication. Here's the date that it was published. Here's the author's name. So here's all of the information that you would need for a works cited if for some reason you didn't have the copy and paste thing at the bottom. All right, so I'm going to read this quickly. This nation's talking, texting while driving epidemic caught up with me this past weekend in the most violent way. Moments after leaving USA Today's offices in suburban Virginia on Saturday evening, I hopped on Interstate 66 for a quick drive home. The skies were overcast, a light mist was falling, and the sun was beginning to set. A young woman speeding along in the lanes behind me was lost in a phone conversation when the 2,500 pounds of metal she was piloting slammed into my vehicle from behind. I never even heard the tires squeal. Her brakes didn't strain because she hadn't even applied them. After we drove our cars to the shoulder, she confessed 2 things to me. She had been driving for only 2 months, which means she's a teenager, and naively admitted that she was just finishing up a conversation with her friend when she hit me. Whether by phone or text, it matters not. We all have stories of watching motorists so lost in their devices or conversations that they might as well be in some other place. Mentally, they are. Statistics confirm how bad things have gotten. About 660,000 drivers in the USA are using handheld cell phones while driving at any moment during daylight hours. This number has held steady since 2010, according to the National Occupant Protection Use Survey. More than half of drivers, 55%, admit to using a mobile phone at least some of the time while driving, according to Expedia's 2014 Road Rage Report, a survey of 1,001 licensed drivers conducted this past spring. Accidents as a result of distracted driving are too often fatal. 3,328 people died in such crashes in 2012, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and 421,000 were injured. State laws have been playing catch-up, and it's now illegal to text while driving in every state except Arizona, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Oklahoma, and Texas. A just-published report in the August Journal of Public Health found that such primary texting bans have led to a 3% decline in traffic deaths among all age groups. Such bans targeting young drivers have coincided with an 11% drop in fatalities among 15 to 21-year-olds. Yet enforcement of these laws has been scarce and uneven at best. In my case, once the state trooper sent us on our way, the adrenaline of the moment subsided and the pain it had masked quickly descended on me. I ended up heading to the ER for x-rays and medication. Before I left the hospital to drive to the pharmacy, my wife texted me, "Be safe." That's the thing. I was being safe. I'm one of the lucky ones. Lucky that my car protected me. Lucky that I was rear-ended and not hit head-on. Lucky that the car seat for our 7-month-old son sat empty rather than cradling his delicate frame. My experience, though frightening and painful, is in many ways the best-case scenario. Too many parents are burying teens whose fatal mistake was to respond to an incoming text. Too many families are shattered because of the selfish impulses of a tech-crazed culture mesmerized by glowing screens. After I got home and took Valium and a muscle relaxant before settling into bed, the other driver had the audacity to text me with a request that I not go through her insurance company with the claim. "I intend to have a clean record," she wrote. I intended to arrive home and pick up my son, but I couldn't. I ignored her request. Here's the thing. No matter how careful and conscientious we are in going about our daily lives, we're vulnerable to someone else's reckless choices, and there's a good chance that we'll never even hear the tires squeal. Alright, so this was just a short little article. Now, just listening to it and reading along through it, you get a pretty good sense of what it's about. If you were to use this particular article and summarize from it, you would either want to now use that method of walk away from it, go do something else for 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back and sit down at your blank page and then start typing about what was this article about. Another thing you can do if you are worried about missing something in your summary is right now you could jot down a short list of things that you want to make sure to mention in your summary. So things you would want to mention are, okay, the first part of this essay is the author telling his personal story about how he was hit by a driver who was distracted by her cell phone. Then it gets into these statistics about how many people are injured and how many people are killed by people who are distracted by their cell phones. So these are two things that you want to make sure to put in your summary. These are both pretty important. So you could jot down a little list, but again, after you've jotted down your list, go away and do something else, and then come back and write from memory. So here's what I came up with for my summary using this method of go do something else and then come back. In the essay, Distracted Driving Hits Home Hard, author John Sineff, so I want to just stop right here and show you, this is how I want you to start all of your summaries, is say in the book, essay, documentary, whatever it is, tell me what kind of source it is, then give me the title, and then give me the author's name. And you can say, you can just say author, and then tell me their name. John Sineff tells a story about how a girl using her cell phone while driving crashed into his car. So remember, I said that was one of the important things that you needed to mention, was that he's telling us his personal story. The author uses this example to show how often people on the road are distracted by their phones. So this next sentence is an explanation of, he tells us this story. Why is he telling us this story? He gives startling statistics on just how common this practice is. So again, I said you needed to mention that he gives us all of this information about what is the result of all of these people texting and driving. Now here I've done something a little different. Here I've included a quote. I'm not requiring you to use quotes, but you might want to. So a good thing about quoting is that it allows you to copy and paste. So you can copy and paste your quotes as long as you put quotation marks around them, because that shows this is not your words, this is the author's words. But sometimes it might be too hard for you to remember things specifically or to rephrase them enough to avoid plagiarism. And so if you come across that, if you come across really interesting statistics or information that you want to include in your summary, you are not required to, but you can put that information in quote form. So to start again, he gives startling statistics on just how common this practice is, such as stating, quote, more than half of drivers, 55%, admit to using a mobile phone at least some of the time while driving. So this is a statistic that shows us how often people are doing this, which is part of what we wanted in our summary, how often it happens. And then we want to see the seriousness of it. All of these distracted drivers on the road lead to many accidents and deaths. In fact, as Sineff points out, quote, 3,328 people died in such crashes in 2012. So if you want to give that specific kind of information, you can use quotes, but again, you don't have to. And then finally, our conclusion sentence, using cell phones while driving is obviously a serious risk to everyone on the road. So this is my summary. It's just a general idea of what is this article about. There's more examples of summaries listed on the sample paper that I gave you. So if you want an idea of how are you supposed to phrase things in your summary, what are you supposed to say, please look at this example and those examples. So after summarizing, now you have to look at credibility. There's 3 different ways to establish credibility. Now, credibility means, why do you trust this information? Why would you be willing to use this article as one of your sources if you were writing an essay? The first thing you want to look at is the author, if you have an author. Now, you might have an article that does not have an author. If that's okay, if that's your scenario, you can skip this step. But if you have a named author, you must give me one sentence about that author. Now, how do you find out information about the author? Well, there's a couple of possible ways. At the bottom of your database or even your website that you're looking at, you might find a biography. Here's what we get. Sineff is a senior editor at USA Today. It's one sentence. It's not much, but it's enough for the purposes of this assignment. So if that's all you have, that's fine. Now, I do want to point out here, there's really not another way to phrase this, so I normally would never say this, but you can copy and paste this information. There's no other way that you can't paraphrase it, so as long as you put that information in there and let us know this about the author, that's fine. I Googled this author. He's got a Twitter page, but there's not any more information about him. Now, you might have an article with lots to say about it. If you found an article by Stephen Hawking, well, there's tons of reasons to trust him. So if you Google the person or find a biography of the person and it lists college degrees, their expertise, awards, professional titles, things like that, give me as much of that information as you can find. And if you can get 3 sentences out of that, you're probably done with why you trust this article. So if that's enough, if this person is so good that you don't need to say anything else about why you trust it, you can stop there. This is not enough. Knowing that he's a writer is not enough. If you can't find information about your writer, then what I want you to do is put the author's name and then say, is a writer at whatever the publication is called. You must have a sentence about your author if you have an author, but this is enough if this is all you can find. So if that's all we can find, we need more than that. So here's what we want to do next. Explain why the publication is credible. So again, publication is newspaper, magazine, journal, wherever it came from, the website. So again, you can Google the publication. A lot of times you're going to get Wikipedia on this. This is an example where you can use Wikipedia because you're just giving basic information. So this article came from USA Today. That's the name of the periodical that it came from. So here's what I found about USA Today. It's a daily newspaper that has been published since 1982 and is the most widely circulated print newspaper in the US. So it's not a ton of information, but knowing how long they've been around, knowing that it's a popular newspaper that's read by lots of people, that gives it credibility. If it was not credible, probably not that many people would be buying it and reading it. So that's our second sentence that we've got. If you get lots of credibility about your organization or your publication, again, you might be done after steps 1 and 2. That might be that you've said enough. However, we only have 2 sentences. We want to get a little bit more information to establish why is this article credible. So the last thing you can do for credibility is look at the article itself. What kind of information does it give that makes you go, oh yeah, there's a lot of good information in here. This is a trustworthy article to use. So you want to look at interviews. Are there people interviewed who are credible? What kind of examples are given? Are there statistics? Is there other evidence given? Is there a list of sources used either within the article or at the bottom? So sometimes, like I showed you with that Wikipedia site, there's a list of references at the bottom that shows you where they got the information. These are all ways of establishing credibility. These are all ways of an author saying, hey, I might not be an expert in this field, but I did a lot of research. And here's where I got my information from. I didn't pull it out of thin air. Here's where I got it. And so if we go back to this article and this part where he starts talking about statistics, here's our key phrase: statistics confirm how bad things have gotten. Look at all this information that he's given us, and look that he's telling us where he got it from. He's showing us, I'm not making this up. Look at these sources that I used to get this information. And so what we can do to establish credibility from what's included in the essay itself is say, this article includes the author's own personal experience with the issue of distracted drivers, because that kind of makes him an expert. He was hit by a distracted driver who was texting, and so he's got his own kind of expertise because it happened to him. Also, as well as statistics and information from sources such as the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Journal of Public Health. So this is a final way to establish why you think an article is trustworthy. What kind of information does it give? So tell me, If the author is giving a personal story about how this topic affected them, that's a way that makes them credible. Whether they are or not, what kind of information are they giving and where does it come from? So he's giving lots of statistics, and then list a couple of the sources that the article is citing. Again, it might be cited within the article, like this one I showed you, or it might be at the bottom. You get a list of references. Either way, that's a way of establishing credibility. That's something that the author does to say, you can trust my article, you can trust this information. So, when you put it all together, here's what it looks like. You have your works cited or bibliographic entry, you have your summary, and then you have your discussion of why is this person credible. And so just to show you the credibility, because we did it separately, here's how it looks when you put it all together. John Sineff is a senior editor at USA Today. USA Today is a daily newspaper that has been published since 1982 and is the most widely circulated print newspaper in the U.S. This article includes the author's own personal experience with the issue of distracted drivers, as well as statistics and information from sources such as the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Journal of Public Health. When you put it like that, I'm like, yes, I believe it. I believe that this article is credible. So, what you're trying to do with number 2 on here is convince me why you think this article is credible. If you can't tell me why you think it's credible, please don't use that article, because it might not be. It might not be credible. So again, this is what it looks like for one of your sources. This is all of the components that you need to put together. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that you don't have to tell me where you got this information. So the biography on your author, the information about the publication, your analysis of its sources used, you don't have to then give me other citations of here's where I got this information. You don't have to tell me that you looked at Wikipedia or that you Googled it or anything like that. That's getting too messy and too complicated. And so don't worry about where you got this information. Please make sure the information is correct and thorough, but you don't have to tell me, again, where you got it from. And once more, from the biography part and from talking about the publication, why these things are credible, you can use Wikipedia, you can use Google, because it's just basic background information, and you don't have to worry too much about trying to rephrase these things. There's not really a better way to say it. So when it comes to your summary on your article, I'm going to be very, very strict about plagiarism. When it comes to your discussion of why something is credible, I'm going to be less strict, because a lot of these things, there's no other way to say this stuff. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're not plagiarizing on your summary, but know that if you're racking your brain and you can't think of a different way to say this information down here, that's okay. I'll take that into consideration when I'm looking at the Safe Assign reports. So that brings us to the end and your writing assignment associated with this. So I assign you an essay to read. What I want you to do, first of all, is summarize the essay. So read it, take some time away from it, come back and write down what is the basic idea behind this essay. Don't forget to tell me the title of the essay and the author's name. That's how I want you to introduce it. So go back and look at this example, look at those examples on the sample paper, and do this in about 4 to 5 sentences. Please don't write me an essay. 4 to 5 sentences is plenty for this. Then I want you to give me the ethos for this essay in 3 to 4 sentences. Tell me why the author, the publication, and the essay itself have ethos. Now, this one is going to be a little tricky, possibly. So Google the author, see what you can find. If you can't find much, again, remember, it's okay to say so-and-so is a writer for whatever the publication is. If you can't find much about the publication, that's all right as well. So this particular essay, you might have to focus heavily on this last part. What is it within the essay that makes it look so credible? And so look at this essay, think about that, and do the best with this that you can. Now, if you get confused about it, that's okay. We'll talk about how to find the ethos, or the credibility within this particular essay, because it might be a little tricky, but we'll talk about it. Okay, so that's your writing assignment. As you do this assignment, you might want to go back through things I talked about earlier in this lecture and reference them to make sure you know what you're doing. But this is practice for when you do this for real on your annotated bibliography that you're going to turn in. So let me know if you have any questions. You can email me. Otherwise, we'll talk about this assignment the next time I see you in class.